You're listening to a CNA podcast. This is typically where it starts. A scammer hidden behind a computer keyboard or a phone, and an unsuspecting target on the other end who could soon be duped of their life savings. Organized crime groups and their scam centers have mushroomed across parts of Southeast Asia. Myanmar has become an epicenter of this criminal activity, and it's become worse after the 2021 coup. The problem isn't new, but it recently came back into focus after this.
Authorities in China say they will make every effort to rescue citizens who have become victims of scam operations overseas after the high-profile case of a Chinese actor who had gone missing.
Police say Wang Xing was abducted from Thailand and taken into Myanmar, where they believe he was made to work in a call scam center. Wang was later rescued. Across the region, authorities are taking action, especially with these trafficking tales causing tourists to think twice. Correspondents Wong and Saksith Saiyasombut join me this week. Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Hello, Teresa.
May, I want to start with you. Your resume is so long. You were based in Myanmar, you were in Thailand for a few years, and now you report from Hong Kong. This is a story you're very familiar with. For someone who's listening, who's saying to themselves, look, I've never been scammed. Why should I even care? What would you say to them? Why is this an important story to cover?
Never say never. And that's the problem, right? When you actually let your guard down and think that you will not be one of those victims, you become very vulnerable. And that's extremely important to keep in mind, simply because this is very, very widespread right now in terms of scamming. And it's a phenomenon that has been going on for years. It's not just, something that appeared overnight. And if you think about it as well, the scammers today are also becoming extremely sophisticated. The scamming criminal syndicates are making use of generative AI, deep fakes, to trick people into not just becoming scammers themselves, but also in getting money and tricking people out of their life savings. So in one part of it, you have people who get tricked into becoming scammers because they were forced into it. And on the other hand, you have people who are losing money, tons of money, their life savings. And it really ruins the lives, to be honest with you. And remember here that for the people who get tricked into being scammers, it's a do or die situation. You get into it, you're forced into scamming others in order to stay alive. Otherwise, you hear cases of them being tortured, cases of them being killed if they don't actually get others or recruit others into the scamming syndicate. So all of these, it just triggers off a really heartbreaking situation.
Now, obviously, these scam centers, they don't have welcome mats rolled out for journalists to take a look inside, but you did get a chance to see these buildings from the border, right? Can you tell us what that was like?
Yeah, so all of these scam compounds really are situated usually deeper inland and not at the border area where they are in full sight. And these, remember here, are standalone compounds. They're built up from scratch. And so surrounding the areas, you will have pretty much grassland. So it'll take you some time to really get in there by car, or the fact that unless you know that it's located inside, then only will you be able to get to that location. And like in Myanmar, for example, as you raised earlier about being at a border area, I've been there a number of times, particularly to the Thai-Myanmar border. And these scam compounds are actually governed within a certain area that's run by militia groups. And so they're considered somewhat of an autonomous region. Think of it like a cowboy town, if you may, because these areas are not governed by the central government, and therefore the militia groups offer protection, and they actually get payments from these scam farms, as you call them. Now, one very infamous location inside Myanmar at the border of Thailand is Shui Koko development. That's over in the Myanmar side in Myawaddy. And that place has long been known to be a hub for casinos, money laundering, as well as drugs. And from the Thai side, you can see the buildings across, such as casinos, hotels, entertainment outlets. And because I've been to the border so many times, Every time I get there, I see new buildings pop up all the time. And these are not rundown buildings. I'm talking about built up, beautiful buildings, glitzy, and they light up like Christmas trees at night.
Wow.
And so there's even one more than 10 stories high that has a giant LED wall display that will screen and play video images through the night. And you actually wonder who they're displaying the images to, because surrounding the area is just empty land and it's really dark from the Thai side, as I can see. And so it's a stark contrast to many parts of Myanmar, as you know today, that have got little electricity or no electricity at all. And yet you see all these glitzy buildings that are lit up in the night. And remember here that in Myanmar right now, it's under a military coup with violent conflicts that's going on. But yet, these compounds are thriving. They're making a lot of money, and there are a lot of people with a lot of activities inside. So just to give you an idea of how much money is potentially generated from these scam compounds, last year, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime estimates that financial losses up to almost $40 billion from all these scams targeting victims in East and Southeast Asia in 2023 alone. $40 billion. Imagine that. I have to be very clear here that I've never stepped into a scam compound. And so I've spoken to a number of these fortunate scam victims who managed to get out, and they told me their experience inside of what they saw. For example, inside the massive compounds, you would actually be seeing kind of like a town. They have their own barber shops. They have their own karaoke bars.
Wow.
Their own pubs. Their own supermarkets. For one reason, these people cannot leave the compound. These compounds are fenced up and they have guard and armed patrol around the area so that all the scam victims are kept within this tight compound. If they do well, if they meet their quota, they will be able to go to the supermarkets, but still within the compound. But if they don't do well, then that's when all the trouble, the torture begins. And that's when you can actually figure out, potentially in your mind, imagine what kind of abuses that these people will go through. And here we're talking about different nationalities, from Thai citizens to Malaysians to Filipinos. And it is because they are brought in there to trick their own particular national citizens. They are there because they speak their language. So, for example, if you have Malaysians, they will trick Malaysians using Bahasa Melayu. Or Filipinos, they would trick their own fellow citizens using Tagalog. So all of these are really, indicative of how organized these crime syndicates are. And also, very interestingly, the victims who managed to escape told me that what it's like inside is as though it's a conveyor belt system, and it's structured and organized in a sense that there are groups trained to do different tasks. For example, one group will be trained to come up with fake Facebook ID profiles. And then once they've done that, they pass it on to the next group or the next department to start to source for victims and try to identify victims. And then it's passed on to another department to start scamming those victims. So you can just imagine how organized they are, and everyone has a role to play in this particular scam. Whether or not you like it, you have no choice, really. So back in late 2023, when I actually spoke to a Thai non-government organization, they were the ones who were also involved with helping to rescue some of the Thai citizens from Myanmar, the scam compounds in there, and get them back into Thailand. And when I spoke to them, it kind of concurred with all the stories that I've heard from the scam victims of the torture if they don't scam recruits, so to speak, to come join them, or if they don't meet the quota of getting a certain number of scam victims, or if they fall short of making certain amount of money. So they are abused, and we're talking about abuses such as being beaten and some of them being electrocuted as well. So I spoke to this Thai NGO, and he recounted some of the same abuses that they went through, and his name was Jaruwat Chinmonka. And he described some of the abuses that the victims also shared with him. Take a listen.
If they were not rescued, they would continue to be forced laborers and be beaten up. They would be forced to scam as many people as possible. There are also no medicines provided for the sick. The best they would receive is paracetamol or an IV. The victims don't have any freedom, and the worst case scenario is they could be killed.
May, you said that you've been to the Thai-Myanmar border a few times, and in one of the stories you did back in 2023, you spoke to the girlfriend of a man who had fallen victim to these syndicates. Can you tell me, how do victims even get entangled, forced into this kind of work in the first place? How does it all start?
Actually, it's very easy. If you think about it, it's very simplistic, really. It's through job offers. That's usually the case. They often target people who are perhaps looking for jobs, who are not very well off. And for example, in Thailand or in other parts of the countries like Philippines or Malaysia, they tend to target people from the rural provinces. So these are the people who perhaps make very little money or are in gig jobs, moving from job to job, and they're looking for something that will offer them more money for sure and some stability. And in this case, when I spoke to the girlfriend of one of the scam victims who eventually managed to get rescued, she told me that the boyfriend was actually given a job offer. And because it was so enticing with the fact that he was going to be offered $1,000 pay a month, he would be given free accommodation, free food, and also allegedly being promised how he would be able to get back into Thailand on a regular basis for visits, and all these would be paid for. And obviously the chance to work overseas in Myanmar. So all of these obviously sounds really good to a person. Once they get there, once they step into Myanmar, then things start to look really, really seedy, meaning passports are confiscated. You're talking about phones that are confiscated. They will not be able to be in touch or let their family members or their girlfriends or wives or husbands know exactly where they are, where they're going. And I've been told that the minute they get into vehicles in Myanmar, for example, you will see men with weapons already on them. So that's when you smell a rat, because they will be brought into the car, they would be taken on a ride, but they will not be able to ask any questions as to how long the ride is going to be, where they're headed to, and at the end of the day, when can they speak to their families again. So all of these things, you don't really think about it, but they do really happen. And when I spoke to the girlfriend, of course, at that point in time in late 2023, she didn't want to be identified for safety reasons, and she was afraid that it could be traced back to her and to her boyfriend as well. But at that time in late 2023, about 300 Thai citizens were rescued out of Myanmar. And this is interesting because earlier I spoke about the scam compounds along the Thai-Myanmar border. But this case with 300 Thai citizens, they were located at the Myanmar-China border. So you see, it's not just scam compounds located in one particular area, but they are pretty spread out, and they are also in areas where people perhaps, will not think that there is any law and order. There are no rules over there, and so it's easier to perhaps go covert in that sense. And when they managed to get out the 300 Thai citizens, it was because there were a lot of violent conflicts going on due to the military coup. And it was because of that reason at that time that foreigners were allowed to leave the Myanmar country. And that was part of the reason how, her boyfriend managed to escape from there. And so when I spoke to her, again, like I said, she didn't want to be identified. But one major worry that she had once her boyfriend was brought back into Thailand was the fact that he was detained by the Thai authorities, because the Thai authorities didn't know whether or not he was a real victim or he was actually a scammer who was voluntarily in the scam compounds to recruit fellow Thai citizens. So take a listen to what she told me when I spoke to her then.
I wish I could help by providing some evidence for my boyfriend, so he isn't charged for these scamming allegations. Many are convinced that these people are call center scammers, but it's not true. Many people were not willing to work there in the first place, and my boyfriend is one of them.
It's so incredible how a picture of opportunity quickly turns sour. Saksith, off the top, I mentioned how the high-profile trafficking case of a Chinese actor really thrust this issue into the spotlight in recent weeks. Wang Xing, that's the actor's name, he told police he was lured by the promise of a job by a major Thai entertainment company. That was a lie, but still, it didn't make Thailand look very good.
No, not at all. Absolutely not. And as we have mentioned earlier, this is not a new problem. This has been a problem that has existed for years now, but it has taken on another dimension now that it has gotten more public attention in China and also has thrown a spotlight on Thailand's quote-unquote role in this. And as you mentioned, yes, this actor, Wang Xing, got a casting call for a Thai entertainment complex, or so he thought. And then he arrived in Thailand, and instead of going to a hotel in Bangkok, he was driven straight to the border to Myanmar and then over to Myanmar to one of these scam centers. He was lucky. He got rescued within a couple of days and he came back. But obviously, when he got back to China, his story went viral on Chinese social media. And this is when people in the People's Republic of China probably became aware of this whole issue, or probably even more aware of this whole issue. As I said, this is not a new problem, but obviously, it became a big headache for Thailand. Why? Because Thailand is still reliant on tourism, especially from mainland China. And mainland Chinese tourists are the biggest group of visitors here in Thailand. And after this incident with Wang Xing, people were simply afraid of coming to Thailand, to fall victim as well to become there. There were anecdotes about search queries saying, how do I cancel my flight to Thailand, shooting up, and also the Thai authorities were panicking because it was right before the Lunar New Year, so a very profitable season. Now, I have spoken to tourism officials, and they have said that at least the statistics for January didn't indicate a drop, but they are now projecting year on year that there will be a contraction of 7% of arrivals from China. It will be still the biggest one, but it is a contraction. This is so they feel the pressure and they feel the heat, not only because of the tourism part, but because Thailand is being used as a transitional place for criminal gangs. Again, this is nothing new, but it has taken on another dimension that Thailand is being basically used as a staging ground for criminal gangs of whatever country, and then to do the criminal activity in another country. But the victims, a large part of them, are also here in Thailand as well, both the scammers and those that are getting scammed.
To deal with the fallout from that high-profile case, Thailand released something that made me do a double take, honestly. When you reported on it last month, Saksith, I just couldn't believe it. Listen to this.
因此，我已要求有关当局加强合作。
Now, that's a clip from a video released by the Thai government, which uses artificial intelligence to have Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra speaking Mandarin, reassuring visitors. I've never seen that before. Saksith, why do you think the government took that step to create this AI-generated video?
Now, we have to emphasize this was AI-generated. The Prime Minister does not speak Mandarin. She has not mastered it just within a couple of weeks. No, that was solely AI-generated. And honestly, I'm just baffled. I'm just baffled why they took this way. Because, yes, we knew beforehand. They have announced after this fallout with the actor Wang Xing that they're going to go on a PR push to assure Chinese tourists specifically that Thailand is safe. But they said, like, yes, the Prime Minister is going to do an AI-generated video speaking to the Chinese tourists. Like, why use AI? I mean...
Yeah, exactly.
Can you use an interpreter or something like that? Can you not zap it over it? So, and then when I actually saw it, yeah, I mean, my first thought was like, aren't scammers using AI-generated stuff as well, right? And then somehow the Thai government thought this was the best way to assure the safety of Chinese tourists by using the same methods. That was my first reaction. But I mean, as I said before, tourism is very important and Chinese tourists are very important to this country. So last year we had 35.5 million tourists arriving here, almost pre-pandemic levels here. And the largest group are from mainland China with 6.7 million. And it is still very much big business. And of course, they don't want to lose this business. I have not heard of any reactions to this AI-generated thing. May have you heard of any reactions over there, how that was received over there?
Well, not really, because honestly, nobody was paying attention, but it was also very shocking to me, particularly, right? And like I mentioned earlier as well, they've been using generative AI as well as deepfakes. And in fact, authorities have been warning people against being tricked into all of these scams via such modus operandi. And so it was very interesting that Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra came up with that.
We could do a podcast episode just on that AI video, but getting back to the trafficking and these scam centers, Saksith, the Thai Prime Minister made a point to have this issue high on the agenda when she spoke with Chinese President Xi Jinping recently in Beijing, right?
I think she had no other choice. I mean, it was made for her to be put high up on the agenda. I'm pretty sure that she wanted to talk about something else. Mind you, because this year, Thailand and China are celebrating 50 years of diplomatic relations. And normally this is a very happy occasion, right? But then, of course, this has been overshadowed by the scam center issues. And in the run-up to this visit, Thai authorities were basically scrambling. They were trying to do something to show that they are taking this seriously. They are trying to combat this in the shortest possible amount of time, even though, it's right there. It's right across the border. You can literally see them, as May just described earlier, and now they are springing into action. So what they have done now is, one of the first measures they have taken is to literally cut them off from power, cut them off from internet. We had authorities literally pushing a button and then on the ground cutting the cables over there. Was it effective? No, because the scam centers were still running because they have generators and solar panels. So their lights were still on. Instead, all the other buildings, the services, schools, hospitals over in the border town, they were affected. The people and the residents over there are not very happy. We have seen protests against the Thai government. The Thai government itself remains defiant to those protests and saying that, no, we're going to keep doing this. And also, this is not only happening on the Thai-Myanmar side of the borders, but also on the Thai-Cambodian side of the border as well. So these scam centers, we are literally surrounded by scam centers here in Thailand. Now, they are continuing also with other measures, talking, for example, about cutting them off from the internet, but then again, they're using satellite connections as well. So there are several steps ahead of the Thai government, and it seems to be that it's very questionable whether or not these actions are effective or not.
What's that saying? Nothing brings people together like a common enemy. And May, it seems like that's the case here. I know you're investigating another angle to this story that involves Hong Kong. A task force from Hong Kong has been sent to Thailand to help rescue and repatriate their residents, right? Can you tell me about that?
You're right. The task force was formed by the Hong Kong authorities and is helmed by the Security Bureau. And this task force was just set up in January. And the task force is actually responsible for trying to negotiate, trying to rescue some from these scam compounds in Myanmar back to Hong Kong. And remember here that once this task force was set up, they actually made several trips into Thailand to meet with not just the Thai authorities, the Myanmar authorities, as well as Cambodians as well, because Cambodia as well as Myanmar are the two key locations where the scamming compounds are located. And they go over to Thailand to share intelligence. They go over there to kind of coordinate their efforts in the rescue. And interestingly, the task force has not been very open about their activities. They've been very reticent about it. I've asked them for interviews, and I've asked them numerous times for interviews with various people in that task force, but all of them came back and they said no. They rejected it, and they claim that it is for the safety and security of some of the remaining scam victims that are still inside the scam compounds. And also on Wednesday, interestingly, the Security Bureau just updated the Legislative Council here in Hong Kong about the numbers. The numbers are not very big. We're talking about the fact that since 2023 until right about now in January 2025, the Security Bureau in Hong Kong received about 30 requests to get the Hong Kong scam victims out from Myanmar. And since then, they've already rescued about 20 of them, and you have the rest of them remaining in Myanmar in the scam compounds, and one of them supposedly in a scam compound in Cambodia. But remember again, this may just be the tip of the iceberg because the numbers are far more than this. A United Nations report on human rights estimates that the criminal gangs are holding at least, hear this, 220,000 people from more than 40 countries at scam centers in Cambodia and Myanmar alone.
Wow.
220,000. Again, that's also potentially a conservative figure because there could be others who are either not reporting that they're there or the fact that they are just either dead or are not found. So keep those numbers in mind because this is something that is not going to go away. And if efforts are not being stepped up, then you can imagine these numbers to just grow. And from 2023 until last month, Hong Kong also revealed that they managed to arrest 11 people in connection with the job scam cases, and they've also prosecuted 2 of such of these scam criminals. Now, the Hong Kong authorities continue, they say, to work with the Southeast Asian countries because many of the scam compounds are in that particular region. They continue to gather information, exchange intelligence, and also they're also stepping their efforts in-house by creating public awareness campaigns, distributing pamphlets, and warning time and again about all of these scamming incidents.
Before we go, guys, I need help understanding one thing, though. The determination to shut these scam farms down and to rescue the victims. It's clear. It's there. But Myanmar beats at the heart of this problem. And so if the civil strife in Myanmar continues, how can these crimes be stopped? Until there's law and order in Myanmar, how can things get any better?
Well, honestly, this is not just about human lives at stake, but the scam syndicates are also stealing billions of dollars. Billions, not millions, but billions of dollars. In fact, just a number as well. The U.S. Institute of Peace had a study last year, and it showed that the scamming syndicates in the Mekong countries, including the likes of Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, they steal at least 44 billion US dollars every year. 44 billion US dollars every year. So this is more than 40% of Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos combined GDP. So this is a global problem, and it will only grow, especially, like you say, without law and order. If the Myanmar violent conflicts continue, if the military coup continues to persist, then you will have absolutely no regulation. There will be no law in there, and everything is going to run amok. And obviously, this is not just concentrated in this particular region of Southeast Asia, but it goes beyond that because, as I mentioned, they're scamming people worldwide. It's a global phenomenon because it's just a click of the mouse, and you'll be able to reach a lot of people from different countries and nationalities just via social media platforms.
Yeah. And on that point, this is not a problem between two countries. This is not a regional problem. This is a worldwide problem. And just to illustrate that, I'm just looking at my notes because a day before we record this, we had 260 victims being freed from Myanmar and they came over to Thailand. And then I got a list of nationalities. And this goes to show you that how worldwide this problem is. The majority of them are actually from Ethiopia, so over 160 of these 260 people are from Ethiopia. And then you go down the list, you have Philippines, Kenya, Tanzania, Brazil, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and so on and so forth. Further countries away like Nigeria, Ghana, a lot of these people are very far away from home and that they have been scammed all the way to here. And they are scamming those people, their compatriots back home. Now, obviously, there's a lot of focus on Thailand right now and also a lot of pressure, mind you, on Thailand as well to deal with this. But as May said, that the problem is over there. Yes, of course, Thailand is a transitional country. And there's, of course, talk here in Thailand like, as for example, are we a little bit too lax with our immigration laws? Are we a little bit too lax with our visa waivers in recent months in order to boost tourism? That is one string of discussions that we have here. But then on the other hand is also how to deal with Myanmar in general. I mean, the scam centers is just one part or one symptom of a whole crisis that we have seen since the military coup over there. Now, of course, the problem is not going to go away once everything in Myanmar is back in order. But you cannot deny that this has exacerbated since the military coup in 2021. But then it goes to show that this has sprawled not only across the border, across the region, but also worldwide. But then also at the end of the day, this is not about only Chinese tourists. This affects everybody. This affects people that are close to you, even if you yourself have not been scammed, but you probably at least know somebody who's got one of these calls. And you probably know somebody, especially somebody who's vulnerable, who may not be technologically literate, that has been scammed by these people and that have lost their money. But then also on the other end of the line, there's possibly somebody who has been lured with false hope and then coerced into it. And if he or she doesn't meet their quota, they can probably also suffer a worse fate here. So this is a chain of suffering that we are seeing here that criminal gangs are profiting from.
Yeah, and as May said off the top, just because you haven't been a victim doesn't mean that this story is not important. Clearly it is. No easy fixes, guys, and the fight continues. Thank you both so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
A reminder, you can find May's and Saksith's reports on YouTube and also on CNA.Asia anytime. And there are also TV episodes of CNA Correspondent that air every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. I'm Teresa Tang. The team behind this week's episode is Saya Win, Clara Ong, Crispina Robert, and Craig Dale. A new episode drops next Wednesday. Join us then. Bye for now.